Willow lived in a big house deep in the woods with her family. She felt out of place many times and wanted to know more about her parents' strange behaviors. One night, she heard scary screams from her dad's room. To know the truth, he follows her family in the forest and finds a scary truth. The movie began in a thick forest. An old woman shouted for someone named William as if she was searching for him. Suddenly, her eyes fixed on a spot and she became scared by what she saw. A wolf was eating a person under the full moon. Then the scene shifted to the present day, where a little girl named Willow lived with her family in a house deep in the woods, far from the city. Her house was always full of people, and she often felt unaware of what happened around her. To discover the truth, she decided to follow her mom and dad when they loaded an animal into their car and drove into the forest. Just as she was about to see more, her grandpa appeared and took her away, warning her that night was approaching and danger lurked in the woods. The next morning, when her mom returned home, she struggled to walk, and her dad looked so weak that her mom and grandpa had to support him to the room. Grandpa told Willow's mom, Imogen, that her husband's condition would not last long. His words made Willow wonder about the strange events in their house. That night, she heard screams coming from her dad's room, sounding like he was in agony. When Willow went to check on him, her dad suddenly lunged at her in a frightening way, and she woke up. It turned out to be a bad dream. The following morning, she noticed that Imogen was washing her dad's coat, which was nearly covered in blood. Unable to hold back her curiosity, Willow gathered her courage and asked her mom, "Mom, what is going on here?" Imogen responded that everything was fine and normal, but Willow felt the need to uncover the truth. Later that night, she secretly listened to a conversation between her mom and dad, where her dad told Imogen that his condition was getting worse, and he knew he was putting her in danger. Before her dad could say anything else, Imogen told him to rest, and then left the room. Willow was still peeking through a hole in the door when her dad suddenly spotted her, causing her to run back to her room in fear after seeing his frightening red eyes. The next morning, before Willow's dad woke up, Imogen took her to the city and got ready to go. It was Willow's first trip to the city, and she was very excited. Her grandpa, who loved her more than anything, gave her money to buy chocolates, and their enjoyable journey began. Halfway to the city, Imogen got out to change her clothes. Willow noticed many marks of injury on her mom's body but kept quiet about it. Imogen firmly told Willow not to mention her changing clothes to anyone at home, and she promised to teach her how to drive a car, which made Willow even more excited. Once they arrived in the city, they completed their tasks. Imogen bought some things for Willow, and they returned home. As soon as they walked in, they found Willow's dad waiting for them, and both women could tell he was very upset. When he saw that Imogen had taken Willow shopping, he lost his temper. He grabbed Willow's dress and started smelling it in a strange way. Then he forcefully put his arms around their necks and pulled them inside the house. Many days passed, and it was shown that tonight was the full moon. Before the night ended, Imogen packed an animal into her car and left with Willow's dad for the jungle. Willow wanted to know where they went and what they were doing that night, so she decided to follow them. She saw Imogen take her dad into a cave where they chained him up. After that, Imogen released the animal inside the cave and then locked a heavy iron door before heading back to her car. As soon as her mother left, Willow slipped through the gap in the iron door to find her dad. She realized that Imogen had seen her enter the cave. Imogen shouted, "Willow, don't go inside. It's dangerous." However, Willow ignored her. Imogen followed her daughter into the cave and discovered that Willow had witnessed something terrible, causing her to faint. Imogen hurriedly brought her home and put an oxygen mask on her. Willow had seen her dad changing into a wolf. She watched in horror as his body grew larger, his nails became longer, his skin ripped apart, and there were huge holes in his mouth. His teeth fell out, and he transformed into a wolf. This sight made her regain her senses, filled with fear. Now, she understood the truth about what had happened to her dad. The next morning, the entire family sat at the dining table. Willow's dad appeared as if he had gone mad, and Willow was very anxious after what she had seen. In contrast, Imogen sat as though nothing unusual had happened. Terrified, Willow suddenly stood up and rushed to her grandfather's house. As she left, her mom and dad came to argue with her grandfather, demanding that he send Willow back home. Her grandfather responded, saying she was scared and could stay with him for a few days. But when her parents refused to listen and continued to fight with him, Willow could no longer bear it. She quietly slipped out of her grandfather's room and headed back to her house. As night fell, Willow's grandfather secretly came to her house and whispered in her ear that she was in danger from her parents. Willow agreed to follow him, But her dad had already learned about this. He chased them in his car and forcefully brought Willow back home. Imogen then felt that her father had kidnapped her daughter. In her anger, she told her dad that he would never visit her house again. She closed the door to her room, but she felt even sadder because her grandfather was the only one who truly understood her. To lift her spirits, her dad decided to take her to the cave where Willow had seen him turn into a wolf. Willow felt frightened in that cave, worried that her dad would hurt her, but that wasn't his intention. He came to reveal an important truth about his life. He shared a story about his grandfather, who was a kind man, but every full moon, something strange happened to him. He would leave everything behind and go into the forest. In truth, he was a werewolf. Every moonlit night, he transformed into a wolf and went into the jungle to avoid harming his wife and family. His wife, Willow's grandmother, had no idea about this. One day, she decided to follow him to see where he went. She entered the jungle and witnessed his terrifying transformation, which caused her to faint. When the moonlit night ended and her grandfather regained consciousness the next morning, he realized that in his wolf form, he had killed his wife. He felt immense sadness over this. This was the same scene seen at the start of the movie when an old woman ran towards the jungle screaming. She was actually his grandmother. The scenes shifted back to the present, where Willow's dad told her that he was also a werewolf like his grandfather. He became very emotional while saying this. Seeing him sad made Willow feel upset, so she went over and hugged him. They returned home happily, and Imogen was also glad to see him in a good mood. Imogen joined in their happiness and all three lay down on the bed. Imogen told her husband that she liked him very much when he was like this. Then the scene changed again, and the next day, Willow's dad took her to the forest to cut wood. The next morning when they returned home, her mom looked very unwell. Days passed with tension like this, and then one day, they had a meeting. Willow had a birthday, and to celebrate, Imogen made a cake for her, which lifted the mood in the house a little. Since Willow was in a bad situation, her grandfather came to visit. She felt very happy to see him with a small puppy as a gift. After that scene, many days passed. It was again a full moon night. As always, Imogen and her husband left for the jungle. When she woke up, she went to the kitchen to drink some water. While there, she heard a voice coming from outside the door. Before she could open the gate, she sensed someone behind her. Her grandpa arrived and stopped her from opening the gate. It became clear that Imogen had left her husband alone in the forest on that moonlit night and returned home. This was why he had come back very angry. He could have done anything to Willow. To protect her, Grandpa placed Willow in her room, and then Imogen took a gun from her dad. She planned to kill her husband with it. When Willow realized what was happening, panic set in again and she fainted. Both Imogen and Grandpa heard the sound of her falling. They rushed over, wanting to quickly put oxygen on her, but sadly the oxygen in the room had run out. Imogen had to go down to the basement to get more. Not worrying about the danger outside, she went to the basement. On her way back with the oxygen cylinder, the gun accidentally fell from her pocket. Imogen's husband was still banging loudly on the door. So Grandpa decided to go downstairs alone. While Imogen hid in a cupboard with Willow, Grandpa descended, filled with anger. He lifted Grandpa with both hands and threw him against the wall, causing him to crash onto the hangings with horns. Those horns became completely stuck in Grandpa's body. After this happened, he angrily went upstairs to find Imogen, who was hiding in the room. At the same time, Willow regained consciousness. Before she could scream in fear, Imogen covered her mouth. She was very scared that her husband might see her, but he left the room because he did not find anyone there. Taking advantage of this moment, she also slipped out of the room. Imogen quickly made Willow sit in the car and told her that if she did not return in 2 minutes, she should take the car and drive away. "Keep driving until the sun comes up. I will bring your grandpa back," she said. Imogen hurried home and helped her dad down from the stairs. He was in a lot of pain. With great effort, she took him to the basement. Imogen quickly helped her dad into the car. The three were ready to escape, but the car wouldn't start. Then Imogen's dad, Grandpa, got out and told her to take everyone to safety while he dealt with the situation. He said there was no time for both of them. Imogen got out of the car and started running toward the forest when suddenly someone grabbed Willow from behind. It was her dad who had been hiding in the forest. He took her into his cave, and Imogen felt scared, unsure of what would happen to her daughter now. Imogen screamed and followed him, and for the first time, we saw Willow's dad as a wolf. Willow was in his lap, unconscious, which made Imogen panic. Instead of fighting, Imogen used love as her weapon. She held the wolf's mouth and said, "Listen, we are your family, and we love you very much." Hearing this made him remember good times with his family. He felt a bit calmer, so he released Willow. She moved away from them, waiting for her mom to fix everything. Meanwhile, Willow's dad, the wolf, began to recall good moments, but suddenly remembered when they all lay on the bed, and Imogen said she liked him like this. This thought made Imogen's husband very angry. He grabbed Imogen and started hitting her, asking, "What does this mean?" In the last scene, when everything seemed fine, nothing was really good. This memory troubled him, and he grew furious. As Imogen reached for a pen, a lamp fell at Willow's feet, causing a fire to ignite. At that moment, Willow had put oxygen on her face. Seeing the fire frightened her, and she got an idea to save her mom. She removed her oxygen mask and directed the oxygen from the cylinder toward the wolf, which caused him to catch fire and die. With the death of the wolf, they finally escaped this problem. Their lives were about to get easier. In the movie's final scene, Willow read a book about wolves while her mom packed to leave the house. Before leaving, when Willow looked at their home, she had many flashbacks of her dad, remembering all the times he tortured her and Imogen, especially the last time when he almost killed them both. And Willow had to burn him to save her mom. In the flashbacks, it became clear that her dad was not truly a wolf. The person causing all the pain was just a psycho who enjoyed torturing his family. This is why throughout the movie, Willow imagined him as a wolf. She thought he was a wolf when he was actually a madman. Now they had freed themselves from him and were ready to start a new life, and with that, the story came to an end.